Okay, now I'm going to record. All right. So we are going to go on to part 2, Beyond the Words. So basically, we're going to recap a little bit of what we talked about last week, just to kind of review it very quickly. And then we're going to focus on the body language. So we're going to talk about eyes, we're going to talk about facial expressions, postures and gestures, active listening, personal space, and how do we use silence as a form of body language and response to nonverbal communication. So why beyond the words? We already talked about how people are back in the office. People are working split work weeks. So you have some people that are going in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then they may be at home Tuesday, Thursdays, or vice versa. We have a lot of people that started their role even during the pandemic. So they never even had a chance to get out and meet their team and be in the office space. And we just got to get used to working with people again. So part 1, and Sean, I'm going to see if you remember some of this. We talked a little bit about the workspace. So we talked about how we need to make sure we just have an inviting look by making sure that we smile, that we're mindful about our personal phones as far as like with ringers and music, and being mindful of the volume that we have around our other peers. And then making sure that we knock first, or if it's not a knock on an actual office door, how do you maybe peer over? We want to make sure that we're invited into the space. And how do we make sure we keep our own office space neat? We talked about meetings. So a lot of the same things, but really more so about how to be on time, making sure you always have a pen and notepad available, because you never can tell if there's specific notes that you have to take. Again, being mindful about your phone in meetings. And then again, keeping the workspace neat when you're working with others. Then for virtual, we talked about how we always want to be screen ready. So we want to check those backgrounds and make sure that people who are around us, they know that we're jumping on a virtual meeting. Make sure you're checking your mute when you're not talking, because we know accidents happen and people may come into your space, you start talking, or you may start doing something that makes a lot of noise. So always making sure you're able to have your mute on. You want to limit multitasking because it can distract us. And then the next thing you know, our name is being called and we weren't really paying attention to what was happening. Staying seated and present. And again, just making sure we're aware of our surroundings, like we mentioned before. And then the last one on emails and chats, we talked about limiting, late night or too early emails or text messages, making sure you have a signature at the bottom, particularly for people who are outside your organization, so they know how to get in contact with you. You want to limit using emojis and abbreviations because a lot can get lost in translation. Think before you reply to all, because there could be some people in the email that may not be a part of the conversation. And so we just want to make sure that you take a time to pause and not reply all, and then use spell check as often as you can. So we covered quite a bit last week. And so now we're going to get really more and more into body language. So our first one has to do with eyes, believe it or not. So there's a lot of expressions that can come up in eyes. Eyes, they say, are the windows of the soul. And we know that there's a lot of emotion that can be expressed in with our eyes. And we had to test that really the last couple of years, right? With the pandemic, where we had to wear a mask and you really weren't able to see a lot of the rest of the facial expressions that people made, right? So you had to get someone's response or reaction, even though they might have been talking, you had to really look at their eyes, right, to kind of see what they were communicating. So it's very expressive when using the eyes, and it is one of our most important communication tools that we had. And along with that has to do with eye contact. So have you ever been in a situation where you're talking and then the person's not even looking at you and you're wondering if they're even hearing what you're saying, right? So having direct eye contact helps with the transmission of the communication, but we also got to keep in mind that there are some differences with culture, society, and religions with eye contact. So it can represent respect, or it can also represent disrespect if you're looking at someone directly. So understanding that sometimes someone's background may have a difference in how they will receive that communication on how you're using your eyes, and your direct eye contact can have an impact on that. The next one, and then actually, Shauna, I know like you said that, well, let me back up with eyes. We also have to realize in a virtual environment, our eyes can be very expressive, right? Whether we're really paying attention or not, if we're surprised. So all of these things with the camera, with all of these virtual tools that we have, sometimes it amplifies even more of what we're doing with our eyes. So have you had an experience where you probably saw someone's expression on a virtual call, and you can see it in their eyes that there's something like that may be different than what they're saying?
Well, that's a lot with my job. I know, and I'm not confessing or nothing, but
No,
a
you don't
lot of
have to. Don't confess. Just
right. But a lot of times when leadership is speaking, you can look across the board. It's like, and everybody's like rolling their eyes or like shocked. And I don't know. I ask questions like, hold on, I don't understand. Can you run that back or can you elaborate? Because I don't put everybody under the bus, but it's like it's almost like you took the air out the balloon, and everybody's like, so yeah, you see that, and that's why a lot of times I say off camera, because like right now I'm tired, but it don't mean that you're boring. I'm just tired because I've had a lot going on, so I definitely understand that part.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great example when you're talking about in a meeting, in a room group of folks, and then you can really see when someone mentions about a new policy or new process or something like that, and how you can read the room if people really accepted what was being said. So
right.
So with that, we know those facial expressions kind of come with it. So there's actually what they classify, there's 6 basic categories of facial expressions. There's happiness, there's surprised, there's sadness, there's anger, fear, and disgust. So who would have even thought that? And this is just a minor sample of the different type of facial expressions. And again, we haven't said any kind of words, but we can pretty much interpret how they may be feeling or receiving the information. And so we have to be mindful of that as we're talking to individuals, what they're communicating back to us or what we may be communicating to them as we're talking to them. Our facial expression can translate a lot of communication. And then posture. Sometimes people don't think of the body language with posture with communication, but we can kind of see, like with this one individual, same chair, same outfit, But look at the different postures, and you could tell whether this is a person who is engaged. The person to the far left definitely doesn't look like she's too much engaged. You have someone that may be daydreaming, or they could be really thinking about what the person is saying, but they could be daydreaming. You have someone that may be thinking of something that they want to get ready to say, and then you got the one to the far right. As far as her sitting up and like having a straight back, she looks like she's very engaged and positive. Receive. So our posture, whether we are, again, virtual or in person, translate a lot of information. And it's crazy how much studies are out there based off of gestures. They have it as a science when they're looking at these things. And even the rest of our postures and gestures and hand movements can say a lot about what we're trying to communicate. So sometimes that's why when we get text messages, a lot can get lost in translation because we really can't see their body language, or we can't see their gestures, we can't see their eyes to really see. So it's important to understand reading postures and gestures, and then how do we take a look at our own when we're communicating. And so you may have heard the term active listening. And it's basically, it's a skill. It's, a lot of times people are misinterpreting hearing with active listening, and they really are two different things. Hearing is just really receiving the sound that's coming through. But active listening actually involves several different points. It involves looking, it involves the eye contact. It involves different steps, that like asking open-ended questions when someone is talking. Are you paraphrasing or reflecting back on what they're saying? And are you really listening to understand, or are you listening to respond? Because sometimes people, they may hear what you're saying, and before they can finish, or you can finish your thought, they're already thinking about how they want to give you an answer. And so that's more so about listening to respond as opposed to active listening. So we want to make sure with active listening, there's 6 points. You want to make sure that you're being attentive. You want to make sure that you're able to reflect what they're saying. And sometimes that may come across as, so let me make sure I capture what you said. You want to summarize. You want to avoid judgment, because a lot of times, again, when it comes to active listening as opposed to listening to respond, there's some people that would already have judgment in place. So you want to make sure that you avoid any kind of judgment from that perspective. So really, active listening has a lot of different components than just listening with our ears. And then I found this to be pretty interesting, has to do with personal space, particularly, when you're in person. And there's actually a study called proxemics, where they take a look and they study what is the appropriate amount of distance that people are encountered, and how that has an impact on your different types of communication styles based off of the relationships that you have with people. So this circle lets you know that people who you are very close to, so whether it's intimate, whether it's family, you're going to have a very close proximity with them. And as you start branching out to strangers and public, you can see that that space gets wider and wider and further away from you. And actually, they've measured in cultures as far as an exact footprint, as far as ideally to be intimate, you're probably within about a foot of each other. If it's a casual encounter, you're about 4 feet away from each other. Anything that's social, you're in between the 4 to 12 feet. And then anything that's more so for public, if you have the opportunity, 12 feet is a good space for that. So it's pretty interesting. And that has a lot to do also with cultures and societies and religions, also about how much personal space. And after we've had the pandemic, or during the pandemic, we were extremely mindful of personal space. In fact, we were told, how far we needed to stand apart from each other when we were in line or as we were shopping, or waiting on services, or if we were in a waiting room. I mean, we were pretty much forced to create our own personal space boundaries. So it's just something to keep in mind, how we communicate through personal space, how that can have an impact on whether that person is receiving your message or not receiving your message.
But what I don't understand, before COVID, like now that they took down the signs, so say for instance in John Eagle, they had the 6 feet, standing. Now they're gone. And I'm finding myself having to leave the buggy behind me. Yeah. Because if I don't leave the buggy behind me, then that's right, another conversation. And it's like, no, we never did this before. Like, you have to give me time. And then I'm in the store with a 9-year-old. It's busy. I don't like to go through and have a cashier ring me up. If I can do it myself, my son likes to do that, but it's just like, it's just not the time. Like, I don't know. I remember when the thing used to come out from the side where you could not put, right. Now, they put it on the counter or whatever. It used to come out the side. It wasn't a walk-in, they need to do something because it's just disrespectful. I get it. Everybody's in a rush. I'm not always in a rush, but I do like my space. And especially with COVID, I'm still wearing my mask. I'm still, washing my hands. When I get home, that's the first thing I'm doing. Even though I may not be sanitizing while I'm out. Right. When I get here, and then when I get it back in my car, I take a Lysol wipe and wipe off my steering wheel and stuff, because even though there's no emergency, we know that it's still possible.
Right.
We're susceptible to catching it.
Yeah. So the personal space has become even more of a topic. And I'm glad that you brought that up, on how, like, you have many people that are more lax, but then you're also more conscientious about people standing behind you. And I remember I had the same experience as well. I'm checking out, and I'm still, even the person that I'm behind, I'm trying not to be on their heels, right? But then you notice somebody else come up behind you, and then they can practically, like, they're just like, you can't even take a back step because they're so close up on you. And so I think as we move forward, it's still going to be a big conversation or cultural thing as far as for space. I still see it. Speaking of cultural, you have some societies where they're so used to having so many people in their society, they're used to being very close and tight, whether pandemic or not. So they don't think about a personal space radius. And then you have those that, whether because of medical conditions or, they're trying to think about their safety, they're going to be much more mindful about their personal space. But it's also about when we are in meetings and when we're at work, right? You have some people that will come up very close to your space, and some people are going to be very uncomfortable with that. People who you may have them get a little bit closer to you. But for a lot of people, that if you don't have an established relationship, whether it's in your office space or space within a meeting, or as you're getting in line to, get food or groceries, you're going to be much more mindful regardless of how much personal space that you have. So you brought up, you just made me think about all the different grocery line encounters that I had, or people just, I'm like, can you please just back up just a minute? I don't even know you that well. Right. So the last big communication that's beyond the words really is, how do we use silence? Sometimes people feel like they always have to keep talking. And instead you can say a lot by not saying anything at all. It states quite a bit of different things. Like we said, it can mean a sign of respect, or it could be a sign of disrespect. It can be, how do you move a conversation forward by pausing? Sometimes people may say something and they're waiting for someone to give an immediate response. But sometimes silence can either help move the conversation on a little bit further, or maybe that person may be in deep thought and they need to have a little bit of space. And that can even work with people, we interact with on a personal basis, right? Whether it's our close friends and family, they start sharing certain things. But if you remain quiet, sometimes they may be concerned if you're someone who talks a lot, constantly, or give a response. And if you were quiet for a moment, not giving a response, they'll be wondering what's going on. And sometimes people like to just fill in the empty space. They don't like it when it's quiet. So then they'll just start talking all of a sudden. So sometimes you can get, for me, I found out that I can get a lot more out of someone being quiet. So when I was doing a lot of sales and I had to interact with people who might have had an issue with service, I just made sure to give them enough space to go ahead and talk by remaining silent, to let them go ahead and get out as much as they can say. Some of them were surprised, or they kind of paused, or they try to reflect back what they were saying to see if it was really that urgent, how they were sharing it with me. But then it was still a powerful message for me to just remain quiet, because it made them think that, what you're saying does matter. And so I'm going to allow you the space to say what you need to say. And then it's going to give me an opportunity to do the active listening to make sure that I'm hearing everything that you're saying. So sometimes as a society, I think we need to use silence a lot more often when we can, because again, it could be such a tremendous communication tool when we're interacting with people, whether that's in person or virtual, right? I know you've probably been on some Zoom calls where it's dead silent again, or at a meeting, and something seems to be new and exciting somebody brings up, and then no one has a response, and it's quiet, and it's going to freak them out, right? As far as okay, well, maybe this wasn't the right thing. So silence is very powerful.
Well, see, and a lot of I see it more because I do a lot of phone work, and so I think for me, because I used to freak out if somebody wasn't talking, I'm looking all around crazy. And I'm like, oh, it's like that right now generation. Like I got to say something or else, like your head gonna explode or something.
Right.
So what I get, and the second thing, when I went to grad school, I did the Jack Welch program. And he said, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
That's right.
Take a deep breath, just relax. And, and I had to find that out the hard way in a group setting, because that's the way I was raised. I was a latchkey kid. I had to be self-sufficient. If I had to make the way or it wasn't going to happen. So I kept bringing that baggage that, just dragging it on everywhere. So now that I figured that out in the group setting, and we all got into it. I'm not going to tell a story, but now with the guests, it's like, okay, you just told me what you need. I need to swallow my spit. I need to readjust. I may not even know the answer. Like I got a bag of fairy dust, and okay, you gave it to me. Thank you. And so what I will do, because I know that feeling of anxiousness or despair, I say, you know what? Okay, let me get this to me, leave it with me for a minute.
Right.
And once I can, now that I'm a personal ambassador, okay, I'll follow up with you. And then I say, well, how are you going to do that? I don't know. I may do an email. I may do a call. I'm not even for sure if I'm going to get it today.
Right.
So, and they'll say, like I haven't been to work in a week, and that's another story, but we have anytime ambassadors that can help now. Like they're going to still move forward and progress, whether I'm not there or not. So I always make them understand, I don't know. I hope I can do it within 3 to 5 days. It may be sooner. It may be in 10 minutes, but I will make sure you get that, what you need. And if not, you can always call back. I keep detailed notes in your file. Somebody else is more than capable of servicing you too.
And that's kind of like what I would say, not having a knee-jerk reaction to everything that's given to you, right? Because then that's when we make the rash decisions or the certain responses come out of our mouth, and then that sends somebody else to a different stratosphere, right? Without thinking things through. So, not having that knee-jerk reaction and using silence, and then being able to say, hey, I'm gonna get back to you. I own this now. I appreciate you sharing everything that you could at this moment, and so I'm going to do my part, because you need to have a moment to think before you even respond. And sometimes we have a lot of people that don't think before they respond, and using silence and being able to pause can help out in those bad situations, or those urgent, I won't say bad, but like, urgent situations where people come across and thinking it's 5-alarm fire. But then once you really think about it, you can probably give a pretty good response. Once you're calm, you're using silence, and then get back to them from there. So those were some good examples. So we went through quite a bit. We talked about that eye contact. It's important, and it's a way of knowing whether someone is listening or not. And then just the overall eye expressions, whether they are on a virtual call or in person, they communicate. They are the eyes of the soul. We talked about those facial expressions, and there's, the 6 different types, whether they're happy, surprised, disgusted, fearful, angry. So these are, and sad, these are some of the 6 important facial expressions that we'll see across many folks as we communicate. Your postures and gestures, the active listening, the personal space, and how do we use silence. And it's just important to know that from the things that we talked about last week, through these 6 things that we focused on today, that communication is definitely more than just talking. And we need to take that all into consideration, because we may lose a lot if we don't have these tools. So it's important to understand how they impact who we're talking to or talking with, whether that's personal or that's professional. So those are pretty much our conversations. Any other thoughts, Shauna, on communicating?
The only thing, and and my siblings do not like when I do this, but I've had to learn how to empty my head. Like, because you get, personal, like yesterday, my brother going through some stuff, and he just dumped on me yesterday. Well, it's my birthday. So the whole time he's talking, I literally like empty. It's like flushing the toilet. I can just empty my head.
Right.
And that's it. And then when I come back to earth, I haven't heard nothing. So I'll just start talking and change the subject. Like, and I don't know, it just infuriates him when I do that. But it's like, he don't understand it's the time and the place. And sometimes like he's going through some like major stuff, like childhood stuff that he's dealing with, and I want to be there for him, but at some cost you have to protect yourself because it's just like a monkey on my back. Okay, so you just dumped off on me. Now I got a therapist I go to every other week.
Right.
I go to acupuncture every week. Like I'm doing things to make me self-sufficient, to
Right.
make me so, and I have the resources and I'm trying to give him the resources, but it doesn't work. So I even do it with my manager. My manager will be like, "You have no idea what I'm talking about." I said, "I have no idea," and it's a safe way. I do. It's gonna get me in trouble, but I'm gonna tell you just to protect your peace of mind, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you know I didn't realize for the last 13 years. That's what I've been trying to get to. So, the facial, because like I didn't see the one on there blank. Like
Mm-hmm.
I got a straight blank
Yeah.
face. And it
Yeah. Yeah. And people are wondering, like, well, what are you thinking about?
yeah, like not that.
Mm-hmm.
Like because
Mm-hmm.
we most of the time we can, you can be trained to do stuff. We can
Right.
figure it out.
Right.
And then sometimes it's just not even worth figuring out. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't have to. And for me, that brings back childhood. Like being
Mm-hmm.
a latchkey. That's how I kind of know. I'm like, okay, he's not in his adult mind frame. He's
Correct.
still a child. Because as
Mm-hmm.
an adult, we can figure this out.
Right.
And it could be another alternative. Maybe it's not even one we've discussed or explored yet. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, so my active listening and facial is kind of not there.
Yeah. And it takes time, right? It takes time to practice it. But, I know even for me as an individual, I may not say a lot, but my face will say a
Mm-hmm.
lot, right? More than words that come out of our mouth. So sometimes you have to kind of you do have to practice, and it is a personal training, right? That you have to do in those type of situations where you may have to have that blank look, right? So then people don't really see
Get
what
offended.
you're, get
Right.
offended and have that response and things like that, particularly, when you're dealing with service or you're dealing with talking with someone on a sensitive
Right.
matter,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's, how do you use it? It's almost like the superhero thing where it's like you got to use your powers for good, right? When you can. And then there's moments where you do need to have that facial expression on. Like I'm sure, like, with kids, mothers
Oh,
are known for this, right?
yes.
Mother didn't say anything, but mother would give you the eye, right? Or your grandmother gave you the eye, your aunt
Right.
gave you the eye, right? And what you're doing, and you would, straighten up and do what you got to do. We know that's still in practice.
Like when my
Quite a bit.
son, when we're in public, he always tries me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll walk up from the side and grab him like on the right side by his neck. I don't choke him, but I put
Yeah,
my
yeah,
hand up there
yeah,
and let him know this can go either way.
yeah,
Let's tighten up because
yeah, yeah.
we're gonna reset you.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like the reset button, right? Just like what we
Yeah.
have to do to reset internet and things like that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right, here's your reset right now.
Right.
Because you're not gonna keep acting up on
And
me.
see, and I'm hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'm taking my PHR, my certification for HR. So I
Mm-hmm.
know me, the chief, what they call us, the chief complaining officer.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I have to be neutral. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be partial. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't come in and be like, oh yeah, I know her. And no, because
Right,
it's not gonna be of no consequence if you're not doing what you gotta do.
right.
I'm still gonna get paid. I'm still gonna be here. Now, are you gonna be here?
Yeah.
That's the type of disposition. So I am trying to be more focused about what's going on and not so much about my own because it's their version, his version, and my version. Because
Yep.
HR gonna make the final decision. But I did go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and the girl, I was looking up at the board because I was just so angry I had to get out the car, first of all. So when I came in and I was like, oh, So I was talking to the girl looking up. She kept like jumping around trying to get my attention. I was like, what is wrong with her? So when I was talking, she was cool. And then when I looked back up, she wasn't. And so she was like, had this puzzled look. When she turned her head, she had the hearing aids. She was hearing
Oh.
impaired. I didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
I was so pistol hot from getting out the car to come in. And I was trying to see, and I was like, oh, I didn't know they had this. And I was just talking to her. My daughter was like, see, Mom, y'all generation do that. Y'all just come on in, don't even. And once I realized it, then I started talking to her. And then she had braces on too. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you got braces. And so I kind of broke it because I didn't want her to think I was just being disrespectful.
Right.
I just was so caught up in the moment
Mm-hmm.
that I missed a big cue
Right.
from her. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And that's something we do have to think about where there's some people that may have impairments. They
Mm-hmm.
may not come across that way or look like they do, but they may have impairments. And so all these different expressions that we do and postures and things like they're reading all of that. And actually they're probably able to read it better than most from most. Compared to other people because of whatever impairment that they may have, right? But, I applaud you for once you acknowledge that because some people probably would have continued to get in a space of where it could get disrespectful, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
understanding that young lady's position. But it just, again, it amplifies even more, again, about all these nonverbal cues give so much more than just the words that come across, whether we're trying to talk it or we're trying to type it, on the chat or text. Like we need all these other cues to help us
Right.
communicate for sure. So, and then, you talked about being in HR and yeah, you want to talk about neutral face, right? I was going to say they have that term, the resting face. I'm not going to say the rest of the
Right.
term,
I know
right?
just
But you do after a while, you have so much time. And I think that's what's happened to me through the years of being in management. You get to a point you don't even know it, but you are training your expressions and your posture, right? Because you have to be more neutral when you're having that individual that's coming in and you have to address performance, or you have two different opposing parties and they have opposing views, and how do you have to have a more neutral
and get
position?
to the bottom line.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So you're gonna have all kind of fun with
I
this.
know. That's why I said the chief complaining officer.
Yes.
And I said, well, good thing my kids are 16 and a half years apart. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
ain't a new rodeo. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm learning because
Awesome.
that is gonna be I know I got the innate qualities to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize until I thought we were going to the boot camp and stuff like this is really gonna be intense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can make or break somebody's livelihood.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, yeah. So, well, awesome. Well, I hope between both sessions you were able to get something out of it. I really appreciate you being able to, jump on last week and also this week. I enjoyed,
mhm.
talking with you and your different examples. And so I just want to make sure, and I think you told me that you had signed up on the
Oh yeah.
for the LinkedIn. Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out because my son had a game. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, and then the game got canceled. So I done already took off work
Okay.
because she was pretty good. I did the
Uh-huh.
first one, and then they had to reschedule. So
Yes.
it
Yes.
lined up, and that's why I know, my steps is kind of being ordered here. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
so because I would have had to work, and I would have to do some other stuff that I'm not supposed to.
Right. 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 We don't
Just
we don't want you to do that.
exactly. So I will definitely be on tomorrow so I can see
Awesome.
because I need that link. That LinkedIn is crucial.
It is such a tool. Like, to think about, I forget how long now LinkedIn's been out. I want to, has it been 20 years?
It probably has.
I think it's been about 20. And I remember when, people were first just trying to get to it and understand, what is it going to be about? And so it was very simple, right? And now you look at the platform, from the training tools that they have on there, the different type of networking groups, and it's such a social, I won't say social, but it really is social media platform for people to share their platforms about their business or about their personal branding. So it's more than just a job search and network. And it's, how do you boost that with it now?
And that's the only one that I'm on. Even I got almost 1,600 people on mine's contacts, and they be talking about their dogs, their kids going to school. I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Because I know you need to break that. You got to break that monotony up sometimes, because when I'm in the office, even though I don't work physically, when I go in, I can't get through the door. How's the kids? Is the cats okay? Your mom, so that personable, that feels good. And that's another thing with HR. I got to know whose kid going to prom, whose kid graduating. They didn't pass the test.
Right.
Maybe I could give you some, you gotta to engage your employees like that boosts your morale.
Right.
I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah, having those personal touches where you can understand something. You may not know everything, but you know something about that, their hobbies that they might be involved in, right? So if they're doing something over, hey, how was that race that you did? How's your training coming along? Or like you said, something related to their kids or their caregiving or whatever. It means that when they come to work, they don't feel like they're just a number coming to work, right? Because you spend a majority of your time at work. You want to at least feel valued.
Work. Definitely. I took a personality test, and my number one personality, it says I'm empathetic. I said, well, that's great. Going into HR.
That is great.
Couldn't have nailed it, hit it
on
the nail. So
awesome. Well, I'm going to see you then tomorrow on the LinkedIn
I'll definitely be there.
And thanks for being a part of Communication Beyond the Words. And so we'll be definitely talking soon and seeing each other.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.